So was Spider-Man supposed to be in Madam Web? Well, a recent story does indicate that not only is that a yes, but it's a huge yes and multiple yeses. So let's take a couple minutes to dive into the whole story, talk a little bit about Madam Web, and where several versions of Spider-Man were supposed to fit into the story. Now before we do that though, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell for all the updates. We do daily Marvel and DC videos, and we want to be your place for all the superhero news, but we're going to do it truthfully and transparently so you are really in the know. Well, right after we found out Madam Web was coming to Sony's SSU, we started to hear rumors that the Spider-Man film was going to be set in the early 90s. Later on, word got out that Emma Roberts and Adam Scott had been cast to play not only Peter Parker's mother, but his Uncle Ben. So many of us went into assumption mode, we know how that works out, that this film was going to introduce a young Peter Parker. Now, we still don't know if this is the case for the film, but we did get an interesting report from Jeff Snyder over on the Hot Mic podcast about some varying details in the movie and how many changes specifically around Spider-Man actually have happened. Now, this isn't from Sony, Marvel, or anybody on their production, so we want to take it with a grain of salt, but Snyder's got a pretty solid record, and this doesn't really spoil any aspects of the movie, so it seemed like something very interesting to talk about. Now, according to Snyder, originally Madam Web was not going to be set in the early 2000s, but set in the 90s, and for a specific reason, because it was actually taking place in the Amazing Spider-Man universe. Now, Snyder does not know if Andrew Garfield was actually set to appear at any time, even though we did hear rumors of that happening. But he was supposed to be part of the film's continuity, which leads to speculation he could have been the SSU's web-slinger moving forward like many rumors we had heard. Now, apparently behind the scenes, at some point, a huge decision was made, and they decided to pivot to Tom Holland's take on the character. Now, this makes a lot of sense, especially if Sony is hoping to see sequels and spin-offs and tie him closer to the MCU, and at that point, setting it any part in the 1990s doesn't work at all. Apparently, according to him, there were a ton of reshoots to fix the timeline issues, and this apparently led to reshoots to remove references to that specific era. Now, the fact that Sony was trying to tie Spider-Man, or is trying to tie Spider-Man into this film, does make a lot of sense, based on other reports we have heard. We've heard multiple unconfirmed reports that after Secret Wars, that all of the Sony Spider-Man characters will be rolled up into the primary Marvel universe. This is something Marvel would likely share with the development team over at Sony developing this specific character and all those supporting Spider-Women that are going in it. Remember, Julia Carpenter, Maddie Franklin, and Anya Krazan are all set to appear as Spider characters in the upcoming feature. So Kevin Feige and his crew at Marvel Studios definitely would have provided some guidance. Now, we heard a ton of rumors that Andrew Garfield was going to come back, and this might be why we were hearing that for some time. It's one of the big problems with rumors, if we're being honest. Things that are talked about and worked on behind the scenes might never come to fruition, and this might very well be one of those stories. Garfield seemed pretty open to returning to the role, and he was great in No Way Home, so I would have been excited to see him do this, but on the larger scale, and for Sony moving forward, it might be best to align with either Tom Holland or a future Miles Morales version of the character. None of these reports really make it pretty clear if a Spider-Man or a version of Spider-Man is actually set to appear. There's still a chance a young Peter Parker is part of this film that hasn't been debunked, but it seems very unlikely if it's a period piece either set in the 90s or 2000s when either Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland were young. Well, you're not going to see him suited up because we're not Spider-Man yet. Now, this doesn't mean we don't get a closeout tying it all together where Spider-Man appears in one form or another, kind of revealing which universe this is part of. I think that's the best case scenario and sets us up for not being disappointed. Now, we have a lot of the Sony Spider-Verse coming our way this year. Not only are we getting Madam Web, but we have Kraven the Hunter and Venom 3 all coming to theaters before the end of 2024. This could be Sony's big year to try to set up their Spider-Man universe, or at least start to get some traction with fans, assuming they can deliver us really good films, which honestly has been something Sony has struggled with in live action. We only have about a month before Madam Web drops in theaters, and I expect we're going to get a lot more details moving forward. Hopefully we get some clarification on any version of Spider-Man appearing, the timeline, and how all these new Spider-Women fit into the future of the greater Marvel universe. We're going to have to wait and see on that one.